Is the election of a chairman to this committee. So have I got a proposer for chairman?
Yes, I'd like to propose Councillor John Horsham.
Do you seconder? Thank you. Is everyone agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just check? Are the neighbourhood councils like this team all allowed to vote?
No, so you're co-opted members, so you don't have voting licences.
At any stage? Yeah.
Thank you very much. So next on the agenda is the election of a vice chairman. Do I have any? I believe I have a proposal for Councillor Tony Franklin to be the vice chairman. Do I have a? I will make that proposal. Do I have a second?
Yes, I'd like to second that. Just to note he's not included.
All those agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Next, we keep going. Do we have any apologies for absence?
We don't have any apologies for absence, so Councillor Nichols might be late.
And I've just been informed that Councillor Franklin might also be late.
It needs to arrive.
Oh, there you are. Thank you very much, Vice Chairman. Next, any announcements? I do not believe there are any announcements from myself, the Chairman, or the Chief Executive, not present this evening. So we will move on then to declarations of members' interests. Just note, I have been advised that any councillors on this committee who also serve as neighbourhood councillors should potentially just reiterate that as an interest. Councillor Fletcher. Thank you very much. I believe that that's not necessarily the co-opted members. I think that's the co-opted members. That's quite evident. It was mostly just for the Horsham district councillors who are both on it. But that's all right. Next, item 6. We have the unparished area budget. So that is to receive the report from the Director of Resources on the right.
Thank you, Chairman. So Sam plans. It was very helpful to put a short report together. It sets out sort of an understanding, I suppose, of the current arrangements. And we had to work on setting the 25-26 budget, which is why we're here tonight, to feed those into that process. Sam was also very helpful to put the current budget in the appendix as well. I was actually going to say much more than that.
I believe this item would be debated, but I would need a proposer to accept the recommendations of the committee and a seconder before we open the discussion. Is that correct? Or can we just go right to discussion? Alright, we'll go right to discussion. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions on the report, which is in the agenda pack, items 3 to 7, I believe? Or any questions? Any comments? Councillor Watt.
I'll start then. Just for everyone, well, some of it will be here, but context is that around the setting up of this committee is in response to the government's peer challenge that took place at the council at the beginning of this year, in which one of the recommendations was that we should consider the governance of our unparished area, and also given the fact that we have special expenses here and special charge raise those funds. So the idea was to make that process a little bit more transparent and obviously to include neighbourhood council representatives here as well to consider the budget for the next year. As we said, Sam put the figures together for 23, 24 and 24, 25. I think it would be useful, if it's available, just to have any indications of what the expectation for the tax base for the unparished area is going to be for the next year, if that information is available. Because I was sort of thinking this in terms of, as we consider items that we may want to put in there or not put in there, and so on and so forth, what kind of envelope we're operating within for the potential budget might be. Because obviously, if you kept it the same, the per household expense the same, but the base has changed, that would mean that the amount raised would go up or down. And I also was interested to know if any consideration had been given to any items at the moment that are not within the scope of the special expenses, but had been thought about as to whether they perhaps should or shouldn't be going forward. Because aside from a few changes around the edges, it hasn't really changed that much in the whole time the special charge has been running, even though obviously quite a bit of time has elapsed in that. So if the officers could elaborate on either of those points, that might be helpful, and it might lead to further discussion.
In terms of the tax base for 25-26 will increase by 36 Band D equivalents, which is a tax base of 12,313 homes. And then ideas to include within the special charge. So we've had some from Den Neighbourhood Council. So obviously the drill hall is included in the special charge for the current year, and that will be sold. So there's £50,000 allocated in the special charge, so it's suggested that be allocated elsewhere to cover other costs. Remedial work to the park and security. There's an idea of some youth or older provision to continue, which is already in there, and then to review the split of the neighbourhood grants that they receive within that amount.
Any further questions? Yes, but may I interrupt first? Obviously, for the Horsham District Councillors, I address them as councillor, their surname. But for the three neighbourhood chairs, how would you like me to address you? Sorry for the formality, but do you want me to? I know your first names, but would you like to be chair? Okay, so Trudy, is that? That's fine. Okay, Trudy, go ahead. And if hold on, before, just because this is being recorded, if you can just press on your mics before speaking.
One of the points that we did raise, and I don't know at what stage it may be discussed, is what internal charges are applied to the special charge. We discovered that we thought we were paying 29,500 for Christmas lights, and found that of that, only 22,000 went to the contractor to actually provide lights. So there's somewhere £7,500 worth of special charge. So does that apply to other aspects of the special charge items? For instance, the youth contract, as far as we are aware, we pay them, I don't know, can't remember what the exact figure is at the moment, but 52,000 now. Is that what they get, or is there a deduction from an internal deduction from that?
So there are internal charges included within the special charge calculation to cover the running costs of the council, such as the procurement contract for the Christmas lights, the paying the invoices and finance recharges, HR, and expenditure like that within it. I'm not sure. I believe the youth provision contract was the contract value, but I would have to check that.
Sorry, Trudy, could you put that, just because it's being brought?
Sorry. Relating again to the Christmas lights, now that for quite a large percentage of them are going to be provided by the bid or your Horsham, whichever you care to call it, do they get internal charges against what the money they spend?
You might have to just make that clear for me. I'm not certain exactly what your question is getting towards.
But the bid have allocated money to the Christmas lights provision, which I presume they pay to Horsham District Council, or do they pay direct to the contractor? And if they pay to
I don't
Horsham
know the answer
District
to that.
Council, do they get internal charges from Horsham District Council?
Well, I suppose it might depend on which route it comes in. If they pay it
I
direct.
have no
if
idea,
if
that's
they
why.
pay it direct, and I'm not.
That's why I was
This
asking the question.
Well, yep, and I don't know the answer to that because I don't know the exact route, whether it comes here first or it goes direct to the contractor. If it goes direct to the contractor, obviously there wouldn't be a recharge because we're not doing anything.
No, sure, but obviously the district council's involved somewhere along the line. Thank you.
Councillor Boffey, did you have a comment, a question?
Not necessarily. It depends on whether they are or why they aren't. If it's separately contracted, then we're not involved. But if it's a contribution towards something, then yes, we are, I suppose, is the answer. But I don't know the answer to whether we are, which route it takes.
Yeah, I think that was going to be my question too. Were they two separate contracts or was it one contract? But I think we can just take that get back to you, and we don't need to wait till the next meeting. We can get an answer to that question. Did Councillor Franklin?
Thank you, Chair. So, certainly for my benefit to a little bit, but maybe for others here as well, could we clarify what the budgeting process historically has been for the special charge? The assessment of what budget is required for future periods, and I guess it will come on to it and how that might be changing through this arrangement, through this committee that we're initiating here.
Can I turn to my officers again?
Good question. So it's generally tended to stay roughly the same in terms of the types of areas that are put into the special charge. So the wardens, for example, have been in there a number of years, and obviously then there are salary cost increases that takes up a certain amount of the envelope, if you like. There have been occasionally some changes. So the drill hall did at one point come out of the special charge to enable the wardens, but actually other things, then might drop out and the drill hall has come back into the special charge. Obviously it will go out again, won't it? Because, hopefully the deal will be done and that will disappear from the special charge, disappear from the council itself. So other things will be put in there, or could be put in there. So therein lies the question, how much of the town centre things should be allocated towards the special charge? Obviously the cost of those is continuing anyway, whether it's done by the special charge, or charged to the special charge, or to the other taxpayers, I suppose. And this is the reason why we're here, to discuss how much and how which assets or costs might be put into the special charge or not. In the past, we've sort of been limited, I suppose, since 2010 or 11 by the referendum caps, which there is a table in the report that Sam's put together that basically government monitor how much collectively on the two charges that we put together, the £177 something or other in the report, they monitor that as to see whether we are going above the 2.99%. But obviously it's made up of two distinct parts, and actually no one gets charged £177. We're actually charged £170 for HDC, and if you live in the special charge area, the extra 37 or whatever it is. So that has sort of, over the last decade or so, limited, in a way, how much can be put on to either, because it needs to come within that envelope at the end of it. So there is a certain amount of, sort of budgeting that is done to make sure that it's in that envelope.
Anyone else have? Yes, Diane.
Thank you, Chair. You've alluded to the fact that the drill hall is going to be sold and the 50,000 comes out. We have the figures for this year. Have you got draft figures for next year already prepared?
On the drill hall, no, because it won't exist in our asset base. So
So have you got, what I mean is a draft of the proposed special charge already prepared for next year?
No, that's what we're here to do now, to put forward the ideas to see what you would like the special charge to be. And when I say we, the committee, so it's not pre-prepared. This is why we're talking and putting forward our ideas to build that budget up, which is the more transparent way of doing it.
If I'm correct, and I'm going to turn to the officers, particularly from Democratic Services here, the main purpose of this meeting was to sort of establish the committee and establish its purpose. But my understanding is the recommendation is to bring the ideas to the next meeting, which we'll be proposing in the next agenda item. So right now, we're not necessarily asking for discussion at the moment for additional ideas. Am I correct in that?
So we're asking for ideas.
We are asking for ideas for review at the next meeting of the special. So we're reviewing them now.
Yes.
Okay, got you.
So the officers.
Right. Okay. So, so then I guess I would turn to the committee then, looking at particularly the list from the current year, and knowing that some items will be coming out of it, particularly the drill hall is what's expected, to then think about what ideas have not been considered besides the ones that were listed previously submitted by Den. Did any of the other, particularly neighbourhood council chairs, if they'd had any time to prepare any ideas, or councillors, I'd be open to hear those now. Councillor Fletcher, did you have your hand up?
I've just put it down because I was going to ask a different question.
Councillor Boffey.
Yeah, I'm going to cheat slightly. It's not so much an idea as another question, really. Picking up slightly on what Diane was saying, really. I appreciate nothing's ruled in, nothing's ruled out, and we're starting from afresh. But obviously, some of these things, for example, say community wardens. Well, don't want to stray into anything that might be exempt, what have you, but inflation happens. But we don't know exactly what those rates. So is there any kind of indicative assumption at all in terms of if we basically did nothing different, what would it actually cost next year in layman's terms, if you see what I mean? Because it wouldn't necessarily follow that it would just be 456,000 next year. If you kind of just cruised along as you were, what would it be?
Correct. So, for example, in the wardens, there will be the salary increase costs, and that would be our budgeted figure for next year, because the pay settlement for 25-26 won't kick in until after we've already set the budget, which is a standard thing that we would do across our council as well. So that one, for example, the current settlement for 24-25 has just been agreed recently. It was £1,290 per post, or 2.5%, whichever was greater. So that would be a similar assumption looking ahead for those sorts of salary items in the budget. Other costs, if it's a contract, for example, might have inflation on it. Inflation, RPI, 3%. So there will be things, and this is, council expenditure is just like this, isn't it? That to stand still, the costs go up. You have to become more efficient or generate income to try and cover those costs that move year on year.
Councillor Mercer, I'll come back to you.
Fine. What you've just said, Dom, if I may. So, as I understand budget building, you would normally put in a number for non-staff costs of likely estimated inflation. So what's that number for the rest of the council? I mean, the percentage.
For the whole council?
Yeah.
For inflation, let's call it 3%.
3%. So if you were inflating these numbers to get a figure of estimated budget standstill for next year, that's what you'd put in, would you not?
70% of our costs, though, are salaries.
I get that. I know.
So 1,290 for some of the lower grades is obviously a higher percentage than 3%.
Sure. No, I'm not.
So
I'm
it's not
taking
science.
sort of staff costs as being likely actuals as best can be predicted.
Yep.
Then 3% for generic non-staffing, plus there may be some specific contracts that you know, or we know, will be more because we've been told they're going to be more, and you would presumably put that in as the base.
Yep, plus any pressures that might be on certain assets. So for example, there could be some maintenance that's you know is coming along and therefore would have to go in for 1 year and out on a different year.
Okay.
So there are other things in there that will also move it so it's bumpy.
And when will you do that process so that there would be an estimate of the base status quo for next year?
We're in the process of doing that for the budget setting. So the budget isn't set until January, February, which is why we're timing this now to draw those ideas out, plus put that base together, which we'll do over the next.
I'm sort of asking on behalf of the chairs,
Yeah,
because
which we will do over the next few days, so that when we meet again, we'll have something in front of us that will give us a clearer perspective of that.
Okay. I'm going to go to Trudy first. You were waiting, and then Councillor Buffy.
Sorry, a couple of things. One which only occurred to me this morning, thanks to our clerk pointing it out. It looks as if we may have to pay employers' national insurance contributions to our clerks. And I don't know how much that's likely to be.
Indeed, and for the council, could be £500,000 worth of additional expenditure.
Certainly won't be that.
So there's a calculation somewhere, isn't there, that you would add to each employee? Yeah, absolutely.
I know there's a threshold, but is it 0 from 0 to the threshold figure, or is it if they go over the threshold? Do you have to pay from 0 to their salary?
Shall we take this offline and I can contact you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we did mention earlier, possibly that we might give a bigger contribution to the park in view of all the sort of antisocial behaviour problems you've had recently. I don't know which budget the costs of that are coming out of, but I think it's something that we would probably support.
Councillor Buffy.
I just did a very rough calculation quickly. I stripped out the drill hall and applied 3% to it, and I came up with about 12 grand of inflation. So that's very, very rough rule of thumb. But if you took out the drill hall and applied 3% inflation, it'd come to 412. So it's then, what do you want to do outside of that? Yeah.
So just for my clarity, so the assumption is that the special charge stays at least what it is right now. There's effectively £40,000 to spend on something else. Is that what we're just basically agreeing as a group? Okay. So I open it back up. Does anyone have any proposals for that spend? Sorry, Councillor Brennan.
Yes. Can I just clarify what we just said there? That we're proposing a 0 increase because of the £40,000 delta. Okay, sorry, that's what I heard, or thought I heard. Thanks.
Councillor Fletcher and then Councillor Messer.
In some ways, the special charge is like a parish precept, but it becomes much more complicated. The parish precept is actually the money that the parish has to spend. So it has to take out its expenditure, and it can add in any income it gets, and then it can spend the resulting sum. With the special charge as it currently stands, any of these assets that generate an income don't feature on here, because this is just the amount that we're charging, and you can't add the income in because it would be it wouldn't work under the capping arrangement. So it's to me it seems there needs probably to be, for some of us non-accountants, some clarification of exactly what we think this special charge is doing here, because there is it's odd because it doesn't look at the income. It's odd because we're taking what has historically been a rather arbitrary proportion of certain line items like the footways or the recreation grounds that we're paying for out of the special charge. And it's odd because we are using some of HDC's assets on these unparished area activities. So that might be overhead costs of the council, and it might be using part of an officer's time, which is something that's not routinely calculated as part of our normal internal accounting. So I'm really just wanting the officers to explain how, as we're going forward, being more open and more formal about how this happens, how they are intending to present those odd issues about this, so that we understand when we put stuff in the special charge, what it actually means. So I'm referring there, for example, to Trudy's comment about the Christmas lights overhead, which seems to me these things are probably to some extent fundamentally uncalculable, as far as some of them, as far as the special charge is concerned, and also some thoughts about the income generating assets and how you'd like to, how does it look to you from an accounting point of view? How will we present this?
Okay, I'm just clarifying and checking whether, for example, on the Blackbridge Lane Hall, the £3,000 there, is that net? Is that the net position after some income? So obviously we do hire it out. So the cost there could well factor in the fact that we know we're going to get some income on it. So it's not just loading the costs on and taking the income somewhere else. That is a charge that, that is the cost of running that net of the gross cost less the gross income gives you a net cost that is then charged to the special charge. So in some cases, obviously the income is factored into the amounts that we are putting through there already. It's not.
So I think I'm asking that there's some clarity for us on the committee of what we actually are doing here.
Okay, yep, we can provide that.
Councillor Mercer.
Because my ward, Roffey South, is on the one hand, part of it is in the unparished area, and on the other hand, part of it is in North Horsham Parish Council area. And so therefore, I feel sitting here, I'm trying to balance those two things. And the balance for me is the charge paid by those who are in the unparished area and the services that they receive for that, as against the precept that other residents in Roffey South have to pay for North Horsham and the services they get for that. And trying to make sure that we're being transparent so that the chairs know exactly what this is about. We're trying to move forward, aren't we, here? Trying to be more clear. And at the same time, make sure that the residents of Horsham get a fair deal, whether they're in the unparished area or in a parished area. And that's why I think we need the sorts of information that my colleague, Councillor Fletcher, is asking for.
Thank you, Councillor Mercer. Any other comments or queries? Councillor Fletcher again.
In terms of line items that we might want to put on this, I'd like to sort of raise the possibility that we would consider being able to put things like where people are wanting to have things like speed indicator devices and sort of spend like that, that's currently coming out of the individual neighbourhood council budgets, but has historically limited what the neighbourhood councils can do, because those budgets have historically been quite small, and to understand the extent to which that would be an appropriate sort of thing that we could actually budget for centrally if we want to have schemes for something like that, or 20 mile an hour schemes, where we've got things that are taking place on the highways, and whether they need to come out of the internal budgets of neighbourhood councils, or whether it would be appropriate to put them in here as individual line items.
Does anyone have a comment on that proposal, or officers? Can I ask a question? Just back to the neighbourhood councils. I'm a bit familiar with my neighbourhood council, but am I correct in thinking that some of the other neighbourhood councils have spent money that would have come from the grant to the neighbourhood councils on such things as the speed indicator devices? That is true, correct? Yes. So that is just consumed then in the running budget of neighbourhood councils. And if I understand now, Councillor Fletcher, you're saying to actually pull that line item out, potentially, of the grants to neighbourhood councils and have a specific line on traffic measures, for example, or some other generic line item.
Well, it's something that's become of increasing interest to various people in the neighbourhood councils, and I know over the time I've attended Forest and Den, the size of the budget needed to buy something like a SID has been a really significant lump out of the annual grant. And so if there's going to be to open up the possibility of people being more ambitious, that might be one way to achieve it.
Diane.
Thank you. To clarify, we actually got a grant from West Sussex to pay for our SID. The expense will be now the erection and getting a contractor in to put it up. I just thought I'd clarify that. So the expense of about 3,000, we got a grant for it.
Julie.
So the other thing which I did mention, I think when we were asked to submit ideas, was the fact that at the moment the neighbourhood councils have got vastly different reserves, because you did ask to look at our budgets on our accounts for the year, and some have actually built up large reserves over various, a long period of time, and are now actually spending that money on projects. Others don't have the reserve to spend on anything hardly, so there is a sort of imbalance there that I think Ruth's idea may partly cover. And the other possible suggestion that would tie in with that is perhaps additional CCTV around the town.
Thank you.
Just a quick one to follow up the reserves question or issue. What are the maybe not rules but guidelines on whether neighbourhood councils should retain reserves or have a certain level of reserve, or should they be just spending it? Is that Mike? I don't know if that's who can help me with that one. Martin, thanks.
Would you like to answer that, Councillor Coffey?
Pretty sure there are no rules.
Do any of our officers concur or disagree with that understanding?
I don't actually know, but I couldn't see a reason why they wouldn't be able to have a small amount of reserve. It's prudent to do so.
Any other questions or proposals? Councillor Mercer?
I'm just going to show my ignorance here, and I apologise, chairs. Are the neighbourhood councils formal entities, or are they informal entities? And therefore, are their reserves held by the district on their behalf, i.e. earmarked, or are they in the bank for the neighbourhood councils?
I believe I know, but I'm going to go to one of the chairs to answer. Would you mind answering, Diane?
We have our own bank, and the money's in our bank account.
So effectively, if I understand, the grants flow from the special charge and Horsham District Council direct to the bank accounts of the neighbourhood councils, and then they are then their responsibility.
But just to clarify, the biggest percentage of any of our grants go towards paying for our clerks and hall hire. There's not a lot spare apart from that.
Any other comments or questions? Mark.
Thank you. I don't know if this is relevant or not, but thinking of things that would cover the whole town area, if we did eventually have a town council, I think the SIDS coming out of that is a good idea. I know it's a whole different thing, but the Riverside Walk is another thing that covers all three neighbourhood councils, and in the Trafalgar area there's an area that regularly floods that for the last couple of years we've been trying to do something about, but we're saying our budget is too tiny to do anything with, so that's something that we would be interested in doing.
So, are there any comments on, to follow that up with a question perhaps to officers? I mean, repairs have been made to the Riverside Walk before. Have those been funded by the council, just general funds, or by the special charge? Any ideas? Maybe.
We don't know specifically, but it's possible that Section 106 might have been used to fund that sort of thing through the capital programme. I'd have to check though to see.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Buffy, did you want
to? So some of the works have been on Riverside Walk have been funded by Section 106 grants in the past. I know Horsham Town Community Partnership has sort of project managed or run those works and have secured the Section 106 to pay for it. Whether that encompasses everything that has been done, I don't know. I would imagine there have probably been works at times carried on by Parks and Countryside that would have been centrally funded as well. So I suspect it is a mixture, but yes, sometimes Section 106 has been used.
Thank you. I keep asking and we keep getting more. Any more comments or questions? So I'm going to turn to my officer because I admittedly am a bit confused. I mean, there are recommendations in this report. Do we need to agree these recommendations? Oh, sorry, Councillor Fletcher.
I'm just thinking that maybe what I'll do is I'll slightly expand my suggestion in terms of the SIDS and so on, which you encompassed with your sort of highways description, to say that I know that there's some real interest, and including from our member of the public who's sitting at the back there, in doing taking a charge of doing some mobility improvements within the town, sort of essentially dropped curbs and things for various pavements. So I'd like my idea to be including that as and other things. So for example, you know, we're looking at, there are things like additional cycle parking is another one that's been coming up quite regularly. So if we could sort of look at that as a sort of wider transport or movement, highways.
We certainly can. We can look at all these different things. I mean, the one thing that did sort of pique my interest though is the fact that you talked about getting a grant from county towards one of the SIDS over there. And obviously that is, you know, you can replicate that process for the other neighbourhood councils as well, rather than it coming out of the special charge or even the council's funding. It should perhaps come out of county's funding if they're going to be still awarding grants for this. So those are the avenues that I think we should be exploring first, and then obviously if we can't do that, then it would go into a special charge if that's, you know, what the decision would be.
Councillor Buffy and then Diane. Sorry.
I'm not sure what exactly the situation in Forest with that, but I suspect when we mentioned grants, what it might actually have been was Section 106 funding, but that was, so some Section 106 HDC can just award it, and some you have to apply to county to get it awarded, and then HDC releases it. So I suspect what it may well have been was county S106, of which there is little left at this point. So Diane can correct me if I'm right about that or not, but when we speak of a county grant, I think it's county S106.
Yeah, that is correct. When you're saying improvements for highways, I'm slightly concerned whether it's going to be then a grabbing war or whether we need to be very specific if that's the way we're going. Certainly on the Riverside Walk in Chesworth, we got Section 106 agreement monies to do a lot of the improvements around there. So.
Thank you. One more. All right, just clarifying on procedure, forgive me, this is the first time we've had one of these committees. Before I do move to propose this report and ask for a seconder, I do want to highlight, if you haven't seen the next steps, so for clarity for everyone, including myself. So it's about timeline, and we'll get to the next time we meet in the next item of the agenda, but the special charge has to be agreed for 25-26 by Cabinet at the January meeting. And just to then be recommended to full council in February 25. So what that effectively means as well, because I've been over this, is that the procedure for that would mean it would go to the Horsham District Overview and Scrutiny Committee earlier in January, which does mean that we need to, this committee, for it to have its input in the process, has to sort of have its proposed special charge line items agreed in advance of the agenda being published for the Overview and Scrutiny Committee at the beginning of January. So that doesn't give us that much time, but in those next steps, you'll see that some ideas have been proposed, and my understanding is that now officers will go away and bring back to the next time we meet, again to be scheduled, just to see how that fits in with the budget proposals, and that we all then agree on those, hopefully as a committee, or it gets passed at least. So that's my understanding of next steps. So with that, unless anyone thinks I was wrong, can we, I would propose that we agree this report, and I need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Mercer. All those in favour say agreed. Agreed. Any opposed? So there's no division. It's okay. So then that takes us to agenda item 7, which is to agree the date and time of the next meeting. And having conferred with officers earlier today, my understanding is, and again on that tight timeline, is that we're proposing to meet still on Monday the 9th of December at 5:30. I am aware that there is one neighbourhood council meeting likely to be that evening, but it is later. So one of you will be in meetings all evening, or several of us. I am proposing then that we agree the date of Monday the 9th of December at 5:30 p.m. to meet back here, maybe in a different room. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Franklin. All those agreed? Agreed? I think that's unanimous for the sake. That then takes us to item 8 for the agenda, urgent business. I haven't been alerted to any urgent business, so I believe then that will conclude the meeting today at 6:14. Thank you very much.